Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or Tiger Tank 1, 2, however you want to call me, I don't really care. And the very first tank that we will be taking a look at in the 9.17.1 test server is going to be the Pzkpfw VII. The one vehicle that actually was already in the game before, but was only available if you played Clan Wars and were successful in the campaigns that Wargaming have actually made. And, this tank could be acquired as a tank, as a Clan Wars reward tank. But the only big distinctive difference that this tank, the Pzkpfw VII, has with the VK7201 P, I think, I have to check, K, excuse me, is that this vehicle is running with a 12.8 centimeter gun instead of a 15 centimeter gun that the Clan Wars reward tank has. Other than that, they look exactly the same. We can take a look at the vehicle real fast, just for comparison purposes. I think it's very important that we take a look at the previous vehicle that is already in the game. And as you can see, other than the gun, this vehicle looks exactly the same. Now, obviously, the guns are going to be the big difference here, or is going to be making the big difference here. It's the same gun that the E100 is using, so it gets an additional 10 to 15 millimeters pen more than the 230 millimeters of penetration that you had previously with this gun. I think it was even a little bit less than that, maybe 226, but I'm not entirely sure on the numbers there. So the very first thing that we have to underline for this tank is that it looks very pretty. At least in my opinion, it's a very nice looking tank, and you immediately see its inheritance of the back turret that is not placed in the middle, but on the back of the tank, which makes this vehicle an amazing tank for side scraping. It's very similar to the previous, the predecessor to this tank, the VK4502B. I got that one right. Which also has the turret on the back of the tank. If we look at this vehicle right here, we can see that it has the lever turret and a very, very special kind of hull. So I think the very first thing that we should be doing on this tank is comparing it to other German tier 10 heavy tanks. And I've already prepared a list of 4 vehicles that I want to compare. 3 of them being the E100, the Maus, and the VK7201K, because it's pretty much the same tank except for the gun. And the very first thing that you'll see is that if we compare it all to these vehicles, that the Pzkpfw VII has the best firepower from the points of the system from Wargaming. The average damage obviously now is not as high as on the E100 or the VK7201K, since they are both rocking the 150mm gun. The difference though is that although the caliber on the Maus and the Pzkpfw VII is the same, its alpha damage is higher with 560 damage per shot, average damage. Now that is 70 HP more than the Maus. So the rolls are going to be a lot higher, and the low rolls are going to be also a lot higher than the Maus's low rolls. So the average penetration is also better on the Pzkpfw VII with 258 millimeters of penetration. It's the same as the T110E5, for example. 258 millimeters of pen is a very, very nice base to be going up against other tanks. And it should suffice for any tier 10 heavy tank destroyer or medium tank if you're aiming for their weak spot. You can see that the 150mm gun on the E100 and VK7201 now have the same amount of penetration as the 128mm gun on the mouse with 246mm of pen, but the rate of fire is going to be much better on the mouse if you compare it to the VK and the E100, but the Pzkpfw 7 with 4.44 rounds per minute is not as close to the mouse, but still closer than the E100 or the VK. Now the reload time thus is not that great. You can see 13.5 seconds. I think that has to do with the better alpha damage, with the better penetration. They just have to balance things out so that the mouse is not going to be taking the short straw every single time. The turret traverse speed is better than on the mouse and the VK, but it's not on the level as the E100. But obviously 19.2 degrees per second is nothing to write home about. Now the gun depression, on the other hand, with 7 degrees negative gun depression and with 17 degrees of gun elevation, this vehicle lives off gun depression. If you look at the 7 degrees of gun depression shooting downwards, 7 degrees of the gun depression is not terrible. It could be worse. It could be 6 degrees of gun depression, could be 5 degrees of gun depression. 7 degrees is not bad. It's like the medium. It's in the middle. 8 degrees of gun depression would have been great. Everything above that would have made this tank too strong, in my opinion, and I think it's a nice balance. So you'll still be able to shoot at tanks in front of you or, you know, below you if you angle your tank and shoot over your side armor, not over your frontal chassis part of the tank. So that makes the tank a little bit more challenging to play. It's not the easiest tank to play, and I think it's a good addition. Now if you look at the aim time, 2.13 seconds, it's better than the 100 VK, but still worse than the mouse. 2.13 seconds should be enough to let you work with the gun. It is quite reliable, to be honest. I've played quite a few battles and I've been pleasantly surprised with the 12.8 centimeter gun. I thought I would have missed the 15 centimeter gun, so at first I would have preferred to be able to choose between those two guns, but then the tank would just be the VK7201K, you know, just one-to-one the same tank. And that is one of the things I want to see on this tank. I want to see some differences, like, for example, maybe put a track around the turret or something like that to make it a little bit more unique, because we have this tank, we have had this tank for 4 years now in the game. Not everybody has owned it, but still, in my opinion, it's quite too similar. Although the gun is different, it's too similar to the VK7201K. If you think that that is total bullshit and what I'm talking about right here, I'd love to hear it in the comment section. Do you think the tank is too similar to the VK7201K, or is it unique on its own already with the 12.8 centimeter gun that it gets? Now the Dispersion, it's the most accurate gun of all the 4 tanks, and the average DPM, it's just below the mouse and below the E100, since the E100 has quite a good DPM, as you can see here, with 2,726 damage per minute. Moving on to survivability, obviously the mouse here with the most armor and the heaviest of all the tanks, it gets all the points. 3,000 hit points, that's 500 less on the Pzkpfw and the VK, 300 less on the E100, but it has the best frontal turret armor, not frontal turret armor, hull armor, with 240 millimeters on front, 160 on the side, and 120 on the rear. It's the least armored on the rear, but it's still thicker armor than the E100, although it does not have the spaced armor that the E100 has. Now the mouse, on the other hand, it does have great armor, but there are some very distinctive weak spots that the mouse presents very prominently once pretty much the turret cheeks, the lower plate on the front. The side armor is not angled. There is not a lot of spaced armor on it. Well, actually, there is spaced armor on it, but if you have a high penetrating gun and you have a good angle, you can still penetrate the tank quite easily on the side. But as soon as the angle changes, it's a whole different story. The same goes for the Pzkpfw 7. Now, obviously, it does have a weak spot, and that is the lower plate right here. And you have a very nice 90-degree angle on the front where both plates, where the hull pretty much aligns, where the welding has been done. And this is where you can shoot with, I think, guns of penetration of above 230 millimeters. And then you have the cupola on top, which is a weak spot, but quite hard to hit because it is quite a small target. A lot of times I've engaged a Pzkpfw 7. A lot of times I've just been shooting at the gun mantlet and not been hitting the cupola on top. So that is one of the things that you have to keep in mind. But once you have the side armor of the tank, you should be able to penetrate it, since there's no spaced armor on the side and the rear is very vulnerable with 120 millimeters. So flanking it and engaging it from the side is a valuable option, or one of the things is that you should be aiming for, because if this tank is side scraping at a corner, which is its main strength, it's going to be very difficult to engage this tank, except if you have 10 Type 4 or Type 5 Japanese heavy tanks who are now all based upon HE, and you can easily disintegrate this tank. It's quite annoying, but that's just how it goes nowadays. So the turret armor with 200 millimeter on the front is very, very thick indeed. The gun mantlet is very thick, and the side turret is, I think, 160 millimeters thick, so quite difficult to go through the front of the turret. That is pretty much everything about survivability. Now, since the tank is very, very good at side scraping, it does seem a little bit overpowered with the 2,500 hit points that you get with this vehicle. It's very heavily armored, it's good at side scraping, it has a good, very decent gun, so it does sound like a very powerful machine. Let's go over to the mobility. And mobility wise, this tank is not slow. 33 kilometers per hour. It's the fastest of all the 4 tanks. Well, it's on par with the VK since it's the same tank. It has the same engine, 1,200 horsepower, and its traverse speed with 25 degrees per second is not the worst. It's a lot better than the mouse, and it's just a little bit worse than the E100. Now, that meaning that this tank is not the slowest heavy tank in the game. It does weigh a lot. You can ram tanks. And it has a great gun and very, very nice armor. It does seem to be quite strong, but do not worry, this tank, with its reload time, is very vulnerable in a lot of situations. I've played a lot of games, and I've noticed a lot of situations I was just overwhelmed. If I did not have the support, if I was all by myself, if I was trying to side scrape, premium ammunition and high explosive will dwindle this tank down. And if you make a mistake, if you do not angle correctly, they will be able to penetrate you by shooting through your tracks or your side armor, and then you'll dwindle and you'll pretty much struggle very, very quickly. So it's a tank that needs a lot of attention to the small detail. So concealment wise, well, it's the best because I have a camo on it. And spotting wise, it does have a view range of 409 meters, but I do not have the best crew in it, so that is why the E100 is better at spotting and has a better signal range. So regarding this tank, the very first thing you'll notice is that it should be a side scraping vehicle, and that is exactly the purpose of this tank. It's very, very good at side scraping, and the armor is very, very good as well. The gun is very, very punchy. It's dangerous enough with 560 alpha damage that should be able to take on enemies of the same tier without a problem. But once this tank is getting flanked, it gets a little bit more critical, since the turret traverse speed is not the best, the track traverse speed is not the best, and you do not have any spaced side armor. So that is enough about statistics. Let's jump into a game and see what this tank is really made of. Game I've prepared for you guys today is on the map Fjords, and it's a very nice tier 10 and one tier 9 and a tier 8 tank. It's almost a complete tier 10 matchup with a lot of tank destroyers, quite a few heavy tanks and some medium tanks, so it's a very nice mix. We're playing on the map Fjords, and it's very important that you know on every single map where the designated tanks should go, you know, because every part of the map is pretty much a specialized part for one kind of one specific class of vehicle. And if you look at Fjords, this little hill and this little corner around here is one of the areas that is mainly functioning for brawling heavy tanks, and this vehicle right here is actually one of those. It's a very, very strong vehicle if you use it in the right way, and that is, you know, to utilize the turret that is on the back so that you pretty much side scrape. But if you're side scraping, you have to keep in mind that this tank is not the VK4502B. That is really the king of side scraping, because this tank right here does have a bigger turret than the VK, and the turret needs a lot more space. So on the hull, on the back of the hull where the turret is mounted, you have a much bigger kind of circle area, which pretty much sticks out. People can easily shoot you if you angle your tank like this. They can penetrate your side by just shooting that corner. And you can see right there, your lower plate right here is your weak spot. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too aggressive, and that is one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're playing this tank. If you do have a corner situation like this, you can dictate the pace of combat, as I'm doing right here, with you know, side scraping correctly, and they're just bouncing, because right now I think I'm side scraping correctly. Actually, I'm not side scraping correct. That would be the correct angle, I think. But you always have to keep in mind that this spot over here is very, very weak indeed. And since it's a levered turret, that is also a weak spot. And the little cupola on top. So this tank is not invincible, as the statistics may have shown it to be, your, you know, how I first interpreted the statistics for this vehicle. It is very well indeed, fairly nicely balanced, and it does do some things very well, and that is side scraping. As you can see here, the gun is just very, very accurate, but it does have quite a long reload with 13.5 seconds. Now, a reload of 13.5 seconds is at tier 10 for a heavy tank, usually at the caliber of 15 centimeter and up, you know. But since you do have a very high alpha damage, a very high damage output on this tank with 560 HP per shot, you know, standard damage, you can pretty much balance things out with the long reload time. Right there you can see this is the area where this tank really feels at home, where you can really brawl and use your armor to your advantage. And it's a very standard heavy tank, you know. It's German, it's heavy, it's not too slow, 33 kilometers per hour. It does have very good frontal armor. The turret is not badly armored at all. The only weak spot that you have to keep in mind, one of the big weak spots, is this turret, the back of the hull right there, that people can actually penetrate that with enough pen at the right angle. That is one of the things that you have to keep in mind. So let's maybe jump into a game and see how this tank fares in situations where it doesn't really have the upper hand. What I've prepared for you guys is on the map Paris. Now, obviously this is a little bit more of an open map. if you compare it to Fjords. Although it is a city map, there are a lot more spaces and areas that tanks can pretty much move around. First of all, you have the very open area where you actually head to the Eiffel Tower. That is exactly where the medium tanks usually brawl and some tank destroyers sit in the back. Then you have this alleyway that heavy tanks really do enjoy going into, and then you have these streets, these open streets that allow for flanking maneuvers. And then you have this middle over here. Usually tank destroyers and medium tanks sit over here and over here at E3 and E8 and shoot at enemies that try to go through the middle. That is the ideal scenario, right? If you have the right kind of team management, you send the medium tanks up here, some tank destroyers back here, then you have a tank destroyer over here, maybe they send a light tank down here to spot what's going down the middle, and you send the other heavy tanks and some tank destroyers down here to have enough firepower and to overwhelm the forces on the other side. Now, very first thing, unfortunately we do not hit that AMX 50B. A very, very easy target actually for this tank. 258mm of pen. That is going to be quite enough to finish off that AMX 50B. And here you have a little taste of the accuracy that you have in this tank. The aim time, very, very nice. But now we're going to be facing some issues regarding the turret that is sitting on the back of the tank. What kind of issues could you mean? Well, first of all, the gun depression of this tank with 7 degrees is fairly decent. I expected it to get a little bit less gun depression, but then you have the problematic of when you're getting flanked around. Now, obviously, you can still turn your turret 360 degrees, but you might run into some problems, and we'll get into those real fast. And the very first thing you can see right there is that the weak spot that you have over there, the side, is fairly weakly armored, so very, very easy target to go through. And I actually just abused that weak spot, you know, fired at the side of that tank, but at the same time I've completely been oblivious to my stance of my vehicle. So he puts a very nice round into my side, and you can see even at this angle you're overmatching. You're giving him too much of a flat surface. We are able to penetrate his cupola, but he's still able to put another round into us. And that is just the thing that you have to keep in mind playing this tank. Now, this map is fairly special, right? So we're able to put a very nice shot into the AMX 50B, 526 HP worth of damage dealt, and we tracked him in place. So my aim right here is to help this Centurion and take out the Pzkpfw, and you can just see the accuracy of this gun. Very, very nice shot indeed. Just a little bit above the AMX Action 10, the Centurion Action 10. And right here you can see where this tank might be a little bit under and overwhelmed. And you can see how the AMX 50B uses our weak spot, the frontal lower plate right here, and the welding part, and shoots at us from above the bridge. We're still able to take out the IS-7, but right here you can see just what your biggest fear should be. Your turret traverse is not the best, and at the same time your side and rear armor is fairly thin. He actually bounced of us with the first shot, but still managed to take us out fairly quickly. So this tank is one of the vehicles that is very, very good at holding one angle, one area, but it's not good as soon as several flanks appear. Because, well, it's just not meant to be fighting at several fronts at once. It does have 2500 HP, it does have great frontal armor, but at the side it's just too vulnerable. Then you have this little area over here on the both sides. And at the same time you do not have the best gun depression, aiming downwards and stuff. So that is just one of the things that you have to keep in mind. I, in my opinion, think it's a very nice tank with its accuracy. It has a very similar armament to the Maus tank, but the Maus does not have the same weapon handling that this vehicle possesses. And since this vehicle can really side scrape fairly well, except for this little part over here, which is kind of a thing that you have to keep in mind, it does do it very, very nicely. It's also a very good sniper. This gun is fairly decent because it does a lot more damage than the Maus. It does have, I think, about 70 alpha damage more than the Maus tank. And if you add the 25% up or downwards, you're gonna get some great numbers or some, well, decent numbers at the 470 HP damage area, pretty much. So all in all, I think this tank is very, very nice. It's just, do we really need it? It's nothing really new. It's the same Clan Wars reward tank with another gun, pretty much. And the gun is not the 15 centimeters, so you're not going to be doing the alpha damage of a E100, but you're also not going to be doing the alpha damage of a Maus tank. So if you prefer the playstyle of the Löwe, for example, which is a very, very nice sniper tank, then this tank would probably be something for you. It's very well armored at the front. Its gun is very accurate, quite reliable as well with the penetration, 258 millimeters, and the gun depression is not too bad, 7 degrees, although you could use a little bit more at the front. But other than that, I think this tank is fairly nice, and it should be not a bad addition to World of Tanks for all the people who desperately wished to be able to play this tank when it came out as a Clan Wars War vehicle. And yeah, I think I'll grind my way to it anyhow, since I'm already on it. I just have to see if I'm going for the Maus tanks, because those are a little bit too slow for me, but we'll see. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little preview video of the Panzerkampfwagen VII. The next video will probably be about the Mäuschen, or the other German heavy tanks that have been added into Dispatch, and then maybe I'll see if I can make some update videos about the buffs on the German medium tanks. So yeah, I'll see you guys on the next video.